Sup you phonies, how's it going? Welcome to another Blender tutorial. Today we are gonna work on camera basics. Anything there is to know about camera movement and the camera settings, that's gonna be covered today. I've already prepared a little scene here. It's nothing crazy, it's just a warehouse and a McLaren in here, and it's of course pink. I used both assets from Blender Kit. If you don't use Blender Kit yet, it's time to download it because you have tons of assets for free, so you don't have to model everything. So go ahead. Now, in order to have the camera in here, because right now I only have a viewport view, I don't see a camera. So if I rendered that, I couldn't render it because I don't have a camera. So let's make a camera. Shift A and camera. Now I can bring it up here. This is my camera here now. And on my top view, that's where I want to look through my camera. In order to do that, hold Control 0 on the numpad. Now we're actually looking through the camera. So you see, when I change the view here up here, also the camera down here, you can see it is also moving. So there's a few settings to adjust. When you have your camera selected, click on the little camera icon. Here is the focal length. Just like on the normal camera, you have a focal length. The bigger the numbers, the more zoomed in it's going to be, more compressed the background is going to be, and the wider it is, the more fisheye it's going to be. So let's go with something simple like 24. It's always a great start. Now the next thing is you want to increase the passepartout, because if you don't, you can see everything around the edges and it can be distracting. So I always turn it up to 1. The next one is, if you want depth of field, which usually you do for realism, turn it on here. Now with the focus object, you can select whatever object you want, and that's gonna stay in focus. Like for example, now it's the car. But a much better way to control this focus object, I always like to make a new object and empty and track my focus to this empty. So it doesn't matter where my focus object goes, that's where the focus is gonna be. So Shift A, empty. Let's use this little arrow here. Let's see where it is. So now I'm gonna bring the focus object, the focus empty, to the front of the car, because that's what I want it to be in focus. But of course, later on you can animate it. If you want the focus to shift from the background to the foreground, you can easily do that. But now we go on our camera, remove the focus object where we use the car, and now we're gonna use our empty. Now the focus is always gonna be on the empty. Okay, now if I want to have a cool camera movement, let's say something like it's going from one side to the other. All you really need to do is set a keyframe here on the location, set a keyframe here on the location, and the rest is gonna happen automatically. The problem with that method is that you don't have full control over what is happening in between. And you're gonna see that in a second. Let's do that. I'm gonna bring my camera here, make sure your camera is selected. Now, item, hover over location and rotation. Now we create a keyframe, so all of this, go to the last frame, let's say it's 200. Bring the camera over here and hover over rotation. Hover over location, hit I and I. And now when you look at it, it's moving from one place to the other automatically. And that is great. For lots of my scenes, that's exactly what I do, especially when I make tutorials on a very fast and I don't want to overcomplicate things. That's how I animate my camera. But there's a way better way where you have full control over the camera movement, where you can adjust it and you don't have to dangle around with those keyframes here, and it's like so weird and I don't know what I'm doing. So I'm going to show you that. So for now we're going to delete the keyframes we got. So now the camera is not moving anymore. So what we're going to do is, let's do a very similar movement going from left to right, but we're going to do that with a curve. So Shift A, curve, and Bezier. I'm going to bring this Bezier up, and all this Bezier does is, it's just a curve. It wouldn't even show in the render. It doesn't do really anything. But we can use this Bezier to attach the camera to it, and wherever the Bezier goes, that's where the camera is going to go. So now when I hit edit mode, I can edit my Bezier, make it bigger or smaller, or I can do with it whatever I want. And of course, right now I only have 2 points, but I can add more if necessary. I can scale those points to have a larger curve. I'm going to bring this further this way, rotate it. So we're going to somewhat have the same animation like before. So you're going to select your camera, add object constraints, go on follow path, and under the target, use the Bezier curve. Now when we adjust the offset, we can see that our camera is moving exactly across our curve. And that's exactly what we want. Now if I want, for example, I want it actually to go up instead, I can just animate this Bezier curve and it's going to go along this way. Now the problem obviously is that the camera is not looking in the right direction. So the curve doesn't determine in which direction we're looking towards. And for that, we're going to make another empty. Let's make this just an arrow up. So now wherever this empty is, we're going to adjust it that the camera is always looking at the empty. Now for that, we're going to select the camera again, give it another constraint, add object constraint, and we're going to select track 2. Under target, we're going to select our new empty. Now as you can see, our camera is always looking at where our empty is. So now I can animate those two parameters. I hover over offset, hit I, go to frame 200, go to negative, let's say here, hit I again. Now I made 2 keyframes. Let's select our empty so we can determine the rotation of our camera. So we want it to look this way. Hover over location. Now go to the last frame, 200, animate the empty location so it automatically adjusts the rotation and orientation of the camera. We did that, hit I, and now we have a smooth camera movement. Now I get a lot of questions on how to make those tabletop animations, like the turntables. Like imagine we're looking through the camera and the camera is actually turning around our subject in an even movement, and how would one make that? And it is very simple, and we have all the objects in here we need already. So we're just going to select our camera, remove the constraints we already have, we don't need them anymore. So let's pick this empty, bring it to the center of the car, and we're going to select the camera, then our empty with Control P, and we parent the camera to our null object. So whatever the null object does now, it's going to impact our camera. So if I rotate it, it's going to also rotate the camera around. So if we rotate the empty around its own axis, around the z-axis, then we're going to have the turntable. So we can even adjust the camera the way we want it. It's always going to look at our empty if we use the same constraint we had before. Track 2 and use our empty. Right now our empty is still moving. Let's remove our keyframes. So now we're just going to adjust the angle the way we want to look at our car, say like this. Now if we animate the empty, just 360 turn, which is very easy. We're going to do that by going in the first frame, have the empty selected, go on item, rotation. We only want to animate the Z rotation, so we're going to remove Y and we're going to remove X. Go on frame 200, and now we're going to adjust this number to, let's say, not 360, we're going to do 359. So the next frame is going to be the first frame, so we're going to be a loop. First you need to select your Z rotation, hover over your graph editor, hit I, only selected channels, and now it has a perfect 360. The problem right now is you might want it, you might not. It's easing in and easing out. That means it starts slow, gets faster, and in the end it's going to slow down again before it stops. Again, you might want this, but in that case we don't. We want it to be a perfect spin, and for that we just hover over the graph editor, and we don't want it to be Bezier, we don't want it to be constant, we want linear. So now it starts in full speed already. Let's just turn it. And that's it for this basic tutorial. I hope that it all made sense. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments below, and see you in the next video. Toodaloo.